happy Wednesday. Today, Jose is going to be joining us and we're going to be talking all about co-hosting midterm rentals and short-term rentals. I first came across the term co-hosting when I started researching midterm rentals since I'm building my ADU and am going to be turning that into a midterm rental. And then when I started researching midterm rentals, I came across the term co-hosting. And that is when also I met Jose at a She Invest meetup here in Roseville. So I'm super excited for him to come on and teach us all about co-hosting as he's a co-hoster himself. So let me just bring him on here. It should have popped up. There we are.
Hey, how's it going, Miranda? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Just here in the office right now. It's been a long day on the tax side, and luckily, as you were just talking about co-hosting, we just got our permit for one of our properties we're bringing on there in El Dorado County. So we just got our final permits approved here today. So yeah,
Yay!
finally,
Congratulations.
I think this one took like almost a month and a half to go through the entire permitting process with the county and through the fire department and all that side of things that we're doing for that owner.
Wow.
But yeah,
That's
so it's
amazing.
but now we're able to start managing that one. We're gonna do a mixture of short-term and midterm rentals for that one.
Oh, cool. So is it a duplex then, or are you just going to be switching back and forth throughout the year?
Switching back and forth. It's
Oh no, having technical difficulties. I think he lost connection. Oh no. See if I could re-add him here. Oh, there you are.
sorry,
We
yeah, I
lost
was
you.
like, I don't know what happened. But yeah, I got your question. Yeah, so for that one, we're going to be going back and forth between midterm and short-term rentals.
Oh, cool.
It's just outside of the city to where midterm rentals would really be at, but it's going to be definitely there for that one-off occurrence. I mean, it's El Dorado County, so you're bound to have fires out there, and it's Cameron Park, so it's right next to El Dorado Hills, and you have
Oh, yeah.
Placerville up north, which prime spot, I mean, there's always something that happens up there, fire related. So
Yeah.
we might get some claims, and if not, then we're going to be playing with it. There's quite a few wineries, wedding venues, things like that we're going to start pushing it forward with on the short-term rental side.
Cool. That's so
Yeah.
exciting. Well, before we jump ahead to all of this fun stuff, let's take a step back. And could you quickly just kind of go over what exactly co-hosting is? I know a lot of people have been seeing that term, I feel like, tossed around, and I'd love to get some clarification on it.
Yeah, so co-hosting in a sense is very similar to property management, to where you're finding tenants for the actual property, whether that be through Airbnb, through Furnish Finder, whatever methods you're using. And we take a percentage off the top of whatever the revenue comes in. And I mean, sometimes the all the fees start definitely adding up. So we take a larger fee than what your traditional property managers take. Typically, it's like around 7 to 10% that property managers take, depending where it's at. But we're taking closer to 20 to 30%,
Okay.
and we deal with pretty much with the whole day-to-day operations of what goes on with the rental. So I mean, I've had instances where someone told me, "Hey, the AC, the what's it called, the AC control's not working," and all it was that they moved it and it wasn't clipped all the way in, right? So instead of the owner getting that call and having to go deal with it, we just send someone out, or we go out there
Okay.
ourselves and take care of those small things. And but yeah, I mean, we help the owners, like I said, finding those tenants. Now, when it comes to midterm rentals, the co-hosting side is definitely a little bit different. We have to be very careful not to overextend into property management, because there are rules and regulations in place for that. When it's 30 days or less, we can act as a full-on, full-service property management server.
Mhm.
So we can collect funds, distribute funds, and do all that sort of thing. But when it comes to 30 day or plus, we need to pretty much not touch the money, let the money go to the owner, and then we just invoice them for our services. But there's other small rules and intricacies. So I've been working with the real estate lawyer in order to make sure that we don't overstep that bound, and later the Department of Real Estate, can come after us for
Right.
that kind of things.
Yeah.
Because you do need a broker's, either have a broker's license or be a real estate agent who has a broker pretty much sign off for you in order to do the full on property management.
Okay. And what would you say was a common pitfall that people usually do overstep on when it comes to,
I think it's the collecting of funds. The fund collection is definitely one that's easy to fall into. Um, but like we have everything go directly to the owner. None of the leases are in our names. It's all to the owners. Because some property managements will take on the lease in their name as well. So we just pass it on straight to the owner to where we're not. I mean, no money comes to us unless it comes from the owner directly to us. I think that's the biggest one. That's definitely probably going to be the biggest one that a lot of newer people are going to overstep on. But definitely get with the lawyer on that side. I mean, it's well worth the price of having someone work with you there, because I mean, one lawsuit and it's already going to cost you more than 10 times what that small consultation with the lawyer would really
yeah.
kind of work herself out with.
Oh yeah, 100%. What's it called? CYA.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotta cover.
literally, especially with this one. I mean, like I said, we're doing a hybrid model with some of ours. Here for the last maybe December and January, certain areas were a little bit slower than they had been in previous years, and so we had to adjust and throw it on Airbnb a little bit more than not. And I mean, that's just part of the game. There's been a lot more people that were for short-term rentals now jumping on full board onto the what's it called, onto the midterm rental side of things. And so we're seeing definitely there's a lot more competition, and some of the issues I have is when people are undercutting pricing. So where now you're a commodity to where it's a race to the bottom. If both your places were at 5K, someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to do it at 4,800," and the next person comes, "I'm going to do it at 4,500," and next thing you know,
Yeah.
everyone else around you is at 4K and you're at 5K still.
Mm-hmm.
You're just so much further off for a lot of these insurance companies to approve you market wise.
So how do you determine how much to charge a client?
It depends on where you get the client from. So one disclaimer we do put like on our furnished finder listing is the price is subject to change depending on like the seasonality of things. So if we were to be on like Airbnb, certain seasons are definitely a lot higher than it would be with the midterm rental side. So we adjust for that. What one good rule of thumb is doing 90% of what you would receive on the Airbnb side of things. Now, when it comes to insurance companies, you want to be bold. You want to be bold to where you're kind of shooting higher, because the insurance companies will, depending on what's around you, they'll approve it or they'll deny it and work with you, and they'll be like $100 less in order to make this claim work, because the thing is that every single individual will have a certain limitation to what their insurance covers. So if they're expecting construction to take 2 years, they're not going to give you a super high price because they know that their benefits are going to expire by the time that you get to those end of those 2 years. So there'll definitely be adjustments there. But if it's mold related and they can get in and out within 3 to 6 months, you typically can get that higher rate that you're looking for, and make the most amount of income that way. Um, and then another good rule of thumb, it's like whenever you're contacting private individuals, is trying to get in with companies, because typically companies will pay a little bit more if there's benefits associated with it, whether it's the monthly cleaning or bi-weekly, monthly cleanings, whether upon they can call upon you and you're going to find the housing for them. And there's some of us, and because shout out to Jesse, Shezzy Vasquez, some of us are in this program. What we do is we we sometimes, we can't fill them ourselves, but we already made the relationship. So what we're doing is we're going out and finding the properties for these individuals as well at times, because I mean, it's you definitely need the demand to be higher than what the amount of midterm rentals are out there
Yeah.
in order for the business to keep running. So I mean, sometimes, I know operators that don't advertise at all. All they depend upon is Furnish Finder, and that's it. And then there's some of us that are, making calls to new businesses. We see new construction. We're going out and talking to the superintendents and trying to figure out, there's a way that we can work together. And there's so many different ways to outreach out here in the area that if you if you put a couple hours a week, you should be fine to where you have very low vacancy. But you always do have seasonality, cut into it, because summer construction is going to be super high in summer. So are the wildfires. So that's typically when demand's going to be the highest for the midterm rentals.
And I like when you said that you shoot for high, because it's not like they're just going to deny you and then move on to the next person, that they're going to try to negotiate and come back.
Yeah, because typically what happens, um, there's, like for example, there's the big, I'll just throw out big names like ALE. That's one of the bigger ones that that does a lot of these contracts, and they only have so many people in their database. They can't, literally house everyone in their database because there's so many people coming in. So if you're already preferred on their database, they're going to try to continue working with you if they can. And so they'll continue, renegotiate and say, hey, price is an issue here. We need to adjust this. And I'm like, all right, cool. We'll readjust it. We'll resubmit it and see what we can do. And then at times it's, sometimes it is zip code related to where they're like, this doesn't work because of they need this specific zip code. And unfortunately, sometimes some of those do slip away where they're just too specific and we can't even, we go out and try to find housing. We go and try to find something to arbitrage and furnish the property. And there's just not something that we can find in that time frame for them.
Okay.
Because, especially that have younger children, people with families is typically the ones that have the most requirements. Sometimes we get people that it's just two adults and they're like, we just need a house. We don't care where it's at as long as it's in the same city and we'll be fine, kind of a thing.
Okay. And I know, because I know when I was looking into it too, I had a hard time talking to bigger companies because I would only have, one or two properties. So do you find yourself like teaming up with a bunch of others and
Yeah. So there are ways around that. And as we were part of Jesse's mentorship, we brought this issue up, and some of us team up to where we're providing 4 or 5 houses. Someone else has 4 or 5 houses, and next thing we know, we're able to submit all 15 of them together as one company. So we're just saying that we're a group and this is what we have. And so whenever the claim comes in, we'll just pass it along to that individual, whoever it is. If there's 2 houses in the same area, what we'll submit the claim. We'll each submit the claim, because at the end of the day, it's going to be up upon the tenant to decide which property they want. They might view 2 or 3 properties, and we're not gonna submit one just because they came through to that person. We're gonna submit both or all 3 of them and let them decide which one they want at the end of the day, or which one is more convenient to them.
yeah.
But that's one way around it, because at the end of the day, a lot of smaller fish, it's impossible to get a hold of these people.
Yeah.
ALE, I've only had a phone conversation with one agent from ALE. I have about 30 people in my database right now from that company alone, but only one time have they picked up the phone. And I think it was like one of those like, oh, I didn't know it was you. I thought I was waiting for someone else to give me a call, and I just happened to pick up, kind of a thing.
Wow.
Because they're terrible with that. So it's all email based, and even then, it's the email based portion. Sometimes you're kind of left hanging to where it's just part of it's nature of the business. Sometimes you send the request, they approve it, the family walks it down. You don't hear anything for about 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, we're good." Or sometimes you don't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then they're like, they decided to move on and stay in the hotel. They're not going to move in.
Okay.
And so it's really hit and miss. So I know there's some people here that sometimes start celebrating a little early, when they're excited. Yeah, I got it approved, but up until you get that contract signed and they're moved in, that's really the only time you can be 100% sure that something's going to go through. Because otherwise, like even right now, I have one that we're trying to fill. I'm trying to fill it in with David Kaminsky. He's another person there in midterm rentals, and they walked the property on Saturday. They loved it, and they were trying to move forward with it. It's now what,
Hmm.
Wednesday, and we still haven't signed the contract, right? So now it's been already 4 more days. We're in the process right now of signing the final lease,
Hmm.
but that's just part of the process to where
Yeah.
it takes a couple weeks.
Okay. And as, competition starts to build, since there's becoming more and more popular for midterm rentals and co-hosting, what ways are you finding are great to be unique in this industry that has helped you stand out?
You want to have the wow factor as soon as you walk in the property. I think that's one of the biggest things. Sometimes people want to be cheap with it, and they don't get professional designers in there. Like, you don't have to design the entire house.
Hmm.
It could just be certain portions of it, just to make sure that as soon as they walk in that door, they see that living room, or whatever it is that they walk into right off the bat,
Hmm.
that it just looks great and that there's good lighting. So being there early, opening the blinds, turning on the lights, just making sure that it's warm and welcoming.
Hmm.
Because most of these properties, you are able to walk them, or the person that's going to be staying there will want to walk them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is professional pictures. I mean, I know tons of people that just do. I mean, so iPhones are great,
Hmm.
but you just can't beat the professional touch to some of these pictures.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just make the pictures. It just makes it look so good. So having a profile that really stands out with pictures, and then as
Hmm.
soon as they walk in, they get the same wow factor coming from it.
Okay.
Some of the, I mean, some of the other basic things, one of the biggest ones is laundry, making sure you have in-unit laundry. That's definitely a big one, because
Oh,
if you're a family, you don't want to have to. If you used to have it, that's definitely a big one there.
okay.
Um, I've had mixed reviews with TVs. Because there's a lot of people that only do a TV in like the main living room area,
Hmm.
and then not in the bedrooms. But then it's depending on the family, some families are used to every person is in their own room kind of a thing. So
Hmm.
it's what I kind of do is I'll recommend, if they want it, we'll add it in, because
Okay.
it'll be like a $300 spend. I mean, you can literally buy 32-inch TVs for $100 now,
Yeah.
and you throw one on with the $30 bracket, you're gonna spend probably about $400 and be able to install this pretty
Hmm.
quickly. So just having those additional things, if they want to make
Hmm.
adjustments, you're willing to. Because I'd rather pay $500 and get a $7,000 contract than go another month with vacancy.
Yeah.
It's well worth the trade
Yeah.
off.
Absolutely. And for like vacancy, now that you mention it, what kind of vacancy do you typically see with co-hosting
Ooh.
or that you budget for?
It is definitely hit and miss. We've had instances to where we're having someone leave a 6-month contract, and we're doing like super deep cleaning. For example, on one property, we had a fence fall over during storms. And so, we're cleaning that up. We're fixing the fence because the next tenant has a dog. So for that one, the closest turnaround was like a week and a half. And they were able to walk the property. They liked it. And, we had to do like small little repairs in the house just from the previous tenant being in there. So even though if you have like a perfect transition, it'll never be that 100% vacancy. You're still going to have a week to 2 weeks in between, because typically most people want to walk it regardless.
Yeah.
And um, and and it is hit and miss with some of these contracts, especially what I found is with the travel nurses. It's hit and miss with some contracts, because uh, travel nurses contracts do get canceled ever so often. And let's say that they were going to be there for 6 months and their contract got canceled month 3.
Hmm.
And you're not advertising as hard for that property, because I'm already banking on I'm going to have another 3 months of this property being filled. So we
Yeah.
do have a clause in our contracts to where we make them pay for 30
Hmm.
days, but they're not what's it called? They're not going to have to pay the last 2 months. So, we do give them a way out, because we do understand that's part of the industry as well with travel nurses.
Yeah.
But it does suck, because now you're having to go rush mode, and sometimes you might have passed up on a contract that you could actually filled in with your property or try to work in with your property, but they told you like, because I've had that happen a couple times to where they cut out and I was like, dang it, we just had that contract come in and I, sent it over to another property and we could have had that one fill in one of ours. So there is some of that. Um, Right now, the longest vacancy I've had midterm wise is 2 months, but I've been filling it in with short term rental
Oh, okay.
stays. But it's so it's not like it's a full 2 months, but the contract we had a couple fall throughs to where we showed the house, the person's liked it, but then what was the issue was the amount that we were asking for. Like I said, there's some people that are undercutting the market,
Mhm.
and that's where the issue starts, coming around because, I mean, the insurance is trying to save you at the end of the day. And even though you're a preferred, like, actually, that one wasn't a preferred list. That one was like a random one that came through. I can't remember what company that one was for, but they viewed it and they decided to go something else. And then I had another person that came in. They were a police officer and they actually had a case with someone right down the street from where the property was at. So they were like, well, last thing I want to do is run into this person and they know where I live at, kind of a thing. So they passed on it as well. So there's all these little, I mean, it's just like things you wouldn't imagine, just happen and then the contracts fall through, kind of a thing.
Okay.
But that's the longest one, and that's the one that we're trying to get filled here this week with this next contract. So that's been our longest one we've had.
Mhm.
But you still get income from Airbnb, which is the good part.
Okay. And when you have a 3 month contract and that 3 month contract is coming to an end, at what point during that contract do you start advertising for the next client,
At
the tenant?
least a month before.
Month. Okay.
Yeah, you at least want to start pushing for it because even if a claim comes in, you can let them know. You can let them know when it's available because some of these adjusters will say, "Hey, we need it ASAP," but they never need it ASAP. They're gonna take a week to approve it.
Mhm.
They're gonna give the person a week to walk it, and then we're gonna get the lease together. So before you know it, it takes 3 weeks to even get all the paperwork and them ready to even move in. So that does happen, but yeah, at least a month. That way you give yourself ample time to really go out there and find someone to fill it and try to do it as soon as possible.
And do you always check with the prior tenant before posting it to make sure they don't want to extend?
Yeah, yes. So we're consistently in communication, and then as soon as they give us, because we do have a 30-day notice,
Okay.
so as soon as they give us that 30-day notice, we're gonna start moving on that.
Okay.
But I had tenants to where they said they were leasing for 2 months. Like right now, I have one in our studio. I think that one was 2.5 months, and then now she just extended all the way to June. So
Nice.
that was going to be ending here in March or the beginning of March.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's going to go all the way until the end of June.
Okay.
So just things like that. I mean, it's very dynamic. Even though people think it's a little more towards the long-term rental side, it's still very dynamic just because of who it is that you have in there. Right now, in our two-bedroom, we actually have a construction crew in there that's working on it's a big trucking company, but I guess it's like a pretty much like a big station for them. So they're in there for a month, but they're talking about how they might end up extending. And so if they end up extending, now we have that was very dynamic because it could be that they let us know the week of, hey, we need to extend another 2 months. We're way behind on work and we need to stay in the property for longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are even more dynamic because construction crews, it's literally once they're done with the job, they're done with the job, and they're not trying to pay for the whole entire month. So
Right.
we can charge them a little more to make up for that, or there can be some dynamics to it that way as well.
Okay. And so when you're looking for these, not just the tenants, but when you're looking for the midterm rentals, like to host, where do you typically find your clients?
So for the midterm rentals, so there's two different strategies that I'm using right now. One for midterm
Yeah.
and one for short-term rentals. For the midterm rentals, you definitely want to be in a well-populated city because you're going to have, I mean, for example, here in Modesto, there's a lot of houses that are from the 60s, 50s, and
Mm-hmm.
70s. A lot of those houses have galvanized piping to where you're more prone to have leakage or a pipe burst. Um, but all throughout the valley, what you also have is if a fire happens out in the Sierras or in the foothills, typically people come back into the valley, whether that's from Bakersfield all the way to Sacramento. If something happens in the pretty much out of the mountains, they're going to come down into the valley for that if it's a bigger fire. Like the Big Paradise one, Chico was overwhelmed with how many people they had to fill in, right? So they always come back in here. So you definitely want to be in a bigger city for the midterm rental side and near hopefully some hospitals if there's multiple, like in Stockton, I'm near Dameron, St. Joseph's. Is there a third one? I think there's a third. Oh, I'm close to the freeway, so there's a French Camp. That's another like Stanislaus or San Joaquin County Hospital. But I'm relatively close to those, so I have a wide market that I can attract to, and then the Port of Stockton as well. That's another one. Um, so you want to be near those bigger companies. Midterm rentals really hard out in the mountains, out in the foothills. It's because it's very rare that you're going to get those kind of claims out there. Um, yeah, I hardly ever see any of those come in. And then for the short-term rental side, we're looking at vacation rentals. So we're all the vacation spots throughout the Sierras. That's where I'm focusing my attention there. But that's mainly short-term rentals, and we're not mixing midterm or short-term rental. Like this Cameron Park one is literally in between, Sacramento and going up to Tahoe. So I feel like it's going to be a mixture because it's low enough on the foothills that we can definitely get some claims there for midterm rentals. But then also, there's a lot of wineries out there that I didn't even know were out there in that area that, they do have weddings there, and then there's also other attractions in the area that can bring in business.
Right. Are there any like common pitfalls that you found when starting out that you would recommend people avoid?
Uh, Common pitfalls. Sometimes when we do analysis, we use programs to do the analysis. Um, just going back and double checking some of these, like for example, the programs are calling for X amount of dollars for each month. So you can actually go like to a previous month and see kind of how other people's calendars are looking and how filled up they are. Because if they're practically all open and it's all, if March is all open for pretty much everyone around Cameron Park, and it's telling me that typically that month everybody brings in around $4,000 to $5,000. Well, that's a little hard to believe. What's the turnaround rate there? So, having a clear um, expectations with the owners, I think is the biggest thing. And then some of the pitfalls, especially someone brand new into it, is I mean, there's a lot of time that you're going to spend bringing on a property. So definitely account for like anywhere between 30 to 40 hours that it's going to take you to and fully put on a property. Because, if you're putting them on Airbnb, your own private booking site, furnished finder, you have to go through all that process, right? And it can take you a couple hours to go through each one of them and fully, because you don't want to half-ass the listing on Airbnb. You want to make sure that you give as much detail and really highlight the things that that need to be highlighted. So pretty much onboarding a client does take a lot longer than 10 or 15 hours. It's closer to 40, if not 60 hours.
Okay.
Um, and then get informed about the permitting process. I think that's another big one. Like for example, this client in Cameron Park, he was my first one there in El Dorado, and the client alone for the permitting I think it was $1,400 and like 50. Was it 1450? It was like around there. But it was $1,400 just for the permit alone. And then we had to buy linens, and then we had to, move some things around, bring in an extra bed. So next thing you know, they're thinking, oh, I can just throw my house on Airbnb. But
Yeah.
in reality, it's $3,000, $4,000 later, and they're not even operational yet. And so trying to break down the items and the costs, I think that's very helpful because then what ends up, I mean, like if this person wasn't understanding of that side of things, I mean, I'd be pretty upset if I thought, all I had to spend was like $500, and next thing I know, I got to spend
Yeah.
$5,000. So, it's that whole side of things. So clear expectations, and then also what it is that you're actually going to be taking care of, and when they're going to be receiving the calls. Because if they're receiving calls that they were not expecting, like, hey, I mean, this client, for example, is in Florida, so this one's a different example. But if someone was nearby and they're receiving calls because something broke in the house and they need to go to the house, that's just going to piss them off. So just having clear rules of what you're going to be doing and what you're not going to be doing, I think at the end of the day is just one of the biggest things.
Okay. Wow. Well, all of that is amazing. I mean, I'm definitely gonna rewatch this and write down more notes.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people, when they're thinking about doing this, feel pretty intimidated. When you like first started, what kind of was your mindset going into that, and how do you feel like that's helped you along the way?
Um, I personally, I like to think of like the next step and not think of the whole pit once I'm in it, because it is overwhelming. It is a lot of. If you were to do one and then you go back down and write all the checklists, I mean, you're just writing pages after pages of every single thing. And so it can be overwhelming, but just taking it one step at a time. And if you're starting with your own property, you're allowed to make that mistake to where, you don't have to go through all the different channels right away.
Mm-hmm.
You might start with just Furnish Finder, and then next week you throw it on Airbnb, and next week, you throw it on VRBO or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. So, but it's a matter of still moving forward, kind of a thing.
Okay.
But when you're co-hosting for someone else, um, there's expectations. You have to bring results to that person in order for them, to be at the end of the day happy. So there is that side. So if you're going to be co-hosting, be prepared for the pressure, because you are going to feel pressure eventually, one point or another, from your client, and every client's different. I have clients that don't want any communication whatsoever. They just want to see their paycheck, they want to see their money, and that's it. Like, they can care less. If
Mm-hmm.
something really breaks and I need to invoice them for example, like a washer that broke in one of our units, that's really the only time I would communicate with them. And then, but then there's other clients that want more of that. Hey, can you like send me a status every month or bi-weekly? Just keep me more in the loop, kind of a thing. So there's a lot of different personalities that are going to be involved in this. So you just got to be aware of that. And I'm part of a few different communities that do this,
Mm-hmm.
but now what I'm seeing is people firing clients. If a client is nickel and diming you, like for example, I said that example of, hey, if I got to install TVs in all these rooms and it's going to bring us a lot more revenue, I'm going to bring that forward to our client and say, hey, this is what we need to make happen. It's going to be a 6-month contract. You're going to make $42,000 on this of gross
Mm-hmm.
revenue. We need to spend $500 to make this happen. They should be on board. That kind of small stuff, they should be
Mm-hmm.
on board. Because I've had I'm friends, Cameron Masters, but we're part of another group of other people that are doing the co-hosting side. And one of our buddies was talking about how they fired someone because, you know, it was like $20 expenses. $20 expenses. They were getting upset about them, and it's like, okay, we're bringing in all this revenue, we're doing all this work, and you're gonna pretty much get upset over a $20 toaster that we had to replace.
Right.
So those little things, you have to definitely think about who your client is. So if you see that their client is more of a headache, you might have to cut ties. So depending on I mean, because sometimes some clients bring in some good revenue, and if you're brand new starting off, it might be harder. But once you're already up and established, definitely look at sometimes cutting back clients, or like if for example, right now I have that Cameron Park one. It could be that one's an outlier for a long time, and it doesn't benefit. It's actually hurting me time wise and profit wise to have that one out there. It could be that I pass that on to someone else here
Mm-hmm.
in the future.
Yeah.
Just because, and it could be that it's not even the client that's an issue. It's just the house is an outlier out of my portfolio, and I rather not manage it.
Yeah.
At times. So yeah, just some food for thought for all the people out there that are looking to get into co-hosting.
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, it's you make a lot of connections. I've been meeting a lot of like restoration companies. I've been able to meet with a lot of them, and then it's almost like double dipping, because then I also promote my accounting business in it, and you know
Yeah.
be able to push both sides of it at the end of the day. So it's a win-win at the end of the day.
I love that. It's so good. And I love that idea too. That for someone who's starting off looking to doing co-hosting, maybe that'd be a good way to potentially get your first client is to contact like seasoned co-hosts to see if there's any clients that they just want to,
Offload, yeah.
pass on
That's
because
I didn't even
saving
think
them
about that.
too much time. Yeah.
That, that's actually a great idea. Like even in Jesse's group, what I found is some of the students there, they don't want to, they thought that they wanted to manage the properties. They might have liked the fact that they found the property, they got it all ready, but then they realize the work that's behind finding the leads,
Mhm.
and that's how we have some of our co-host opportunities. I know other students that's how they co-host is within the group itself, but now we have some people that are trying to sell their portfolios. So where it's like, hey, I manage 10 properties here in Dallas, Texas. Is anybody interested in purchasing this portfolio from us? It's fully operational. We have all our profit and losses and take it on like that. So
So
there's also that opportunity of it,
mhm.
to where you build a large enough portfolio and you're able to sell it off for a decent profit if you ever want to get off the business,
Yeah.
because it's definitely not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said, it's typically the first week whenever we bring a long contract, that's when we get the most calls.
Mhm.
After that, it's typically pretty smooth unless something major happens. But the first week is I got to be ready on call for just about any reason that that they're gonna
Yeah.
be picking up on whatever small defects the house may have.
Okay. Do you use any like systems or apps or websites to help you kind of organize all of this that you built up?
So
Some prop-
I do have an assistant. She's actually out of Mexico. So I do have a virtual assistant. She helps me with that side of things. We use Asana, which is it's like a project management, task management system. So that's how we communicate as well as, I mean, we use WhatsApp for a lot of the stuff, but as we go through these processes, we use Loom to record videos. Like if I'm showing a process on the laptop, I'll just throw on Loom video, and that way I can do it once and then offload it to my assistant. And then we also do have some checklists that we were building out and things like that. But I do have an assistant that helps me out with that. So that's a good way to expand, especially if you're expanding quickly. Because what am I paying her? I mean, I'm probably paying her like probably like $10 an hour, which is a little high. But she's living out near Cancun, so her cost of living is a little bit higher than
Mhm.
what it would be in other areas of Mexico. And I know I've seen a lot of what nationality is it? Filipino VAs that are out there, anywhere between $3 to $5 an hour.
Mhm.
But it's all a matter of vetting them. Like this VA, she's actually involved in real estate in Mexico, so she's like a realtor in Mexico as well. So
Mhm.
we connected really quickly. She speaks great English. I've actually spoken Spanish to her, and she's only responded to me in English, which I found quite funny. I was like, oh, okay, I've never heard her speak Spanish once. I know she speaks it, but not once has she spoken it to me.
That's
But yeah, but she's been with me for since October, I want to say. So I haven't had her for too long. But she helps out with all that side of things and just pretty much helping me build out the processes as we go.
wow.
Because it is, once again, it is overwhelming. You do have to take it one step at a time,
Yeah.
because if you look at the whole picture of all the tasks you got to do, you're going to be like, holy crap, this is so much more than what I bargained for, at times.
I
So,
think
you know,
in that instance, it's too good to have like a long term plan of like, okay, what am I looking to get out of this? And going into it knowing you're gonna have to put in a lot of work, I think is a great mindset to have. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel like if you go into it knowing it's gonna be a lot of work, but you have that long term vivid vision of what you're trying to get out of it, what you're trying to build, that's gonna kind of help you through those tough first days or weeks or months when you're
yeah,
starting out
definitely.
this. Now, is there a way that or the way that you need to protect yourself? Like, do you have to get any special type of insurance or anything you recommend putting in contracts to just protect you and your business?
Yeah, so you want to definitely get commercial insurance for your business. I wouldn't co-host out of my personal name. I have an LLC, and that's how we co-host. But then also verifying what kind of insurance the landlord has.
Mm.
Um, you know, whenever you have, for example, if you're doing short-term rentals and even mid-term rentals, a lot of these, most of the mid-term rentals are not going to be a year long. So they're still considered short-term rentals in the eyes of big insurance companies. So even if you have a regular renter's insurance on or renter's policy for your home, you still need to have either like Wavo, not Logify, Steadily. Steadily is another one that has their own insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to go through them and get the right kind of insurance and have the owner put you in as someone who's also protected underneath their insurance itself.
Oh, okay.
Um, and these are one of those things that you have to push back on the owners because it is going to cost them a couple $100 more per
Mm-hmm.
month. But if you don't do it, you're putting yourself at jeopardy and also the owner because if something happens to the house, there's a fire in the house. Let's just say that it actually burns down or
Mm-hmm.
something, and they had a homeowner's policy or a regular renter's policy, and they find out that it was through short-term rentals or through the midterm rental and it wasn't a long-term lease, the policy will not cover them. So they're still going to be in debt for that, whatever that mortgage amount is, but then they're not going to get the coverage of rebuilding their house. They're going to have to figure it out one way or another. So it's definitely one of those topics you want to push back. And I know there's some people that are like, oh well, they didn't want to get it, so I still took it on because it's my first one. Those are definitely some of the ones that you just want to push hard,
Mm-hmm.
and not give way to the owner because they want to save as much money as they can. But yeah, insurance that's a must have because I mean if something happens at the property, especially here in California too, you can get sued by your company, but I have my commercial policy to cover me for that.
Okay.
But then if something happens with the inside the house specifically and they try to sue the owner and then me, at
Mm-hmm.
least we're covered by that same policy the owner has.
Yeah.
So and 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 yeah, like Wavo's actually one of those very nice ones to where you can adjust depending on how the house is. I believe the lowest you can get is like a 5K for general furniture. So if it's a super basic house, you might do the 10K for Wavo. But if it's like a super nice cabin up in Tahoe, you'll probably want to do the 40K to where, for example, this guy out of Cameron Park, he had this an original painting that was what's it called, the Last Supper, but in flowers. So it has like the sunflowers like Jesus, and then like there's other flowers that are designed, but it's the original picture, and I guess that was actually worth quite a bit of money. And he wanted to leave it in there, and I was like, dude, I really don't feel comfortable that there's like a 5 or 10K painting
Right.
hanging on that wall. Like that just makes me very
Yeah.
uncomfortable because something can happen, and especially because it's not like a super luxurious Airbnb that we're asking for the top dollar where, you typically get the best clients. It's going to be a general Airbnb. And I mean, luckily he took it down and now we're replacing it with, some art that we probably spent like $50 on.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot more comfortable with that than a $5,000 painting up on the
Yeah.
wall. Yeah. So,
Uh,
so something to think about.
and then let's see. It looks like we have a question here. Who's your commercial policy through?
Good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I got it through. Man, what is the name of it? I have a couple different ones for the different businesses. I want to say. Let me see what this one is. It's through HISCOX, HISCOX. And that's just a general commercial policy. But there's what was the name of it? I think it was called Insurion, to where like they submit your profile to like 10 different insurance companies,
Mhm.
and then they let you choose whatever policy fits you best. But we cover ourselves with the $1 million residential and then 2 million aggregate. So we have a pretty decent coverage for us to be covered on that side of things. And um, but yeah, so I want to say I don't pay much for that one. I think it's like $70 a month almost, or
Oh,
$80, something like that. It's relatively low for what for the protection you're actually getting.
Yeah.
I
And
don't see the receipt here, but yeah, it's somewhere around there.
so if the tenants were to damage the property in any way, say it wasn't from a fire or anything, it was just wear and tear, whose insurance would cover that?
That's where Waymo would come in,
Okay.
and that's why you want to have that because they would actually replace, give you money to replace the, like if they broke a bed, they broke a table, whatever it is, and you're able to do
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's almost like air cover if you were going to go through Airbnb, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot faster, and typically the claims are not as, because with like air cover, you need to have all your ducks in a row with your receipts and all the paperwork in order to make sure that it actually goes through. But with Weibo, it's a lot simpler to go through a claim with them. I luckily haven't had to go through a claim with them, but other people have said that it like I mean like you just told them what the price was and they didn't have to provide any documentation, which was really sweet.
Okay. And when you created your contract, did you have a lawyer or create it for you, or did you find a certain website that offers just like a bare
Yeah.
minimum contract to get started with?
Yeah, so Jesse Vasquez in his program, he provided one for us, but then on top of it, I had my lawyer review it and make adjustments as needed. So he did make some adjustments, but I mean, so shout out to Jesse and sign up for his class if you're on this live. But but he does provide that. He does provide those kind of contracts and the addendums that you typically need. Like if you're doing arbitrage, you need the sublease addendum to be added on there and things like that. But I mean, my lawyer didn't really see any issues with the contract on its own. They just added extra what's it called? Extra wording just to like if it wasn't specific enough. I can't remember exactly what sections, but like he went in there and just like clarified a sentence to make sure that there was no ambiguity between what someone might interpret it as.
Wow.
So it's always good to have your lawyer review it because I mean, you want to have a lawyer available. That way, as soon as something happens, you're able to go right to them and get working on the
Yeah.
problem. And then, so if they're aware of what contract you're using, and because then if something happens and then I come with them and I show them the contract, they're like, "Well, crap, dude! Like, you left yourself open because this was too ambiguous and it can be interpreted in different
Right.
ways." So, having a lawyer ready to go, that's always a plus.
That's awesome. And was your lawyer already experienced with midterm rentals?
He was actually he had worked quite a bit with short-term rentals, so we're using the short-term rental as pretty much the guide because midterm rentals still fall into that aspect to where they're not that year plus.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very well experienced with short-term rentals. So the midterm rental I think it's been more so newish than short-term rentals. I know people have been doing it for a while, but it's still like lawyer-wise, he hasn't seen as many clients with midterm rentals, but more so with short-term rentals.
Okay. Sorry, that's Taco.
Okay.
Just playing
Oh,
with
it's
him in
named
the
Taco.
background.
Okay,
Yeah, that was a little chihuahua you saw earlier. It's Taco.
nice.
You hear squeaks. She's just playing with her
Yeah.
toy in the background. Well, all of this was so amazing. Is there anything left over that you feel like we haven't covered that you feel like someone just starting out should know?
I mean, just get ready to get your hands dirty. Especially with the first couple clients. It's gonna be you just gotta be willing to put in the work at the end of the day with this. I mean, and you gotta treat it as a business and not just like I'm gonna do it, so often because that's how you're gonna lose the clients if you're not putting that full on effort to bring it in, make sure that they have zero vacancy. Um, it's definitely not something to be taken lightly. I mean, you can make a lot of money off of it. You can definitely make a lot of passive income. I mean, some properties are bringing 1,500, 2K for me. And if you start, you don't have to have a large portfolio to make a decent amount of money co-hosting.
Mhm.
So, very easily with 5 to 6 properties, you can be making $120,000 a year off of co-hosting alone. And I mean, if you treat it like a full-on full-time job, you'll definitely be successful. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of continuing at it, and you have to find a community. I think is one of the biggest things,
Mhm.
because like even right here in Stockton, Abel, who I think is on the live, I saw him jump on there for a bit.
Mhm.
Him and I talk, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Dave Kaminsky, we should talk a little bit more, and so we all know each other now, to where if contracts come in, we're pushing the contracts to each other,
Mhm.
and now I mean I've had contracts come in to where I'm pushing them out to other people because we're filled already and they have vacancy. And just by having that close network of 4 or 5 people in that general area has really allowed us to boom our business, because now it looks like we're always able to fill contracts because we have that little network going on. So definitely get to know some of the other key players in your area.
Wow. Networking is key. It always is.
Networking's key. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and pretty much
if
anything.
if anyone wanted to network with you, where can they find out more about you? And did you want to tell people about your meetup in Stockton too?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, we do. My partner and I, Flip and Ant. I don't know if he's on the call, but we host a meetup every first Tuesday. But actually, this March we're gonna have it on a Wednesday. So the first Wednesday of this month we're gonna have it. This topic that we're gonna be covering this time is 1031 exchanges, but we're gonna have it at El Torito here in Stockton. So if you guys are local, more than welcome to stop by. We have about 30-ish people that come by every time, but it's going to be a good topic, especially, I mean, if you have, a long-term rental and you're trying to buy multiple mid-term rentals or multiple short-term rentals, it could be a good opportunity to learn how to do a 1031 and potentially do that as well. And then I'm always open to questions. So, if you guys ever have any questions, you can DM me at Jose_D_investor. Yeah, or just, reach out to my company, Valley Housing Solutions. Hit the, I think it's the contact form or whatever, and let me know if you guys have questions. So I'll be happy to help.
Yes, you guys. He's so knowledgeable about co-hosting. He's so knowledgeable about taxes. I actually first met him at an investor meetup where he came to talk about
But,
like cost
yeah,
segregations, and then the midterm rentals just kind of came up. So definitely reach out to him. You're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to just share all of your knowledge and experience. And I really appreciate you coming on.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
All right, you as well. Thank you. Bye.